The yawn came at the worst possible moment. Nathan Vellner stood under the oppressive lights of the alien council chamber, blinking back the effects of near 30 hours without sleep. The ceiling above him pulsed with faint ultraviolet hues, and the air smelled faintly of metal and citrus. Around him, a circle of tall, sinewy beings in iridescent robes observed him with large, unblinking eyes. They were called the Yilari, and they had not blinked once since his arrival. Nathan's jaw cracked open as he tilted his head back, arms slightly raised, and he let out a long, guttural yawn that echoed far too dramatically in the acoustically perfect chamber. The room fell silent. The Yilari who had been speaking Counselor Vyark, if Nathan remembered correctly, paused mid-sentence. Its long neck straightened abruptly. The others took a step back in unison, their pale blue skin flushing a deeper shade of indigo. One of them raised a shimmering staff that emitted a low-frequency hum. Nathan lowered his arms, confused by the sudden tension. He said, rubbing the back of his neck, "Sorry, I'm just tired." Counselor Vyark's voice was low and careful. "Tired? Of diplomacy?" No. Nathan raised both palms. "Not like that, I mean physically tired, exhausted. Haven't slept in over a day." "You issued a battle cry," Vyark said. Its tone was unreadable, but a subtle flicker of light ran along the veins of its temples. "You extended limbs, exposed your oral cavity, and vocalized at maximum lung capacity. That is the Yilari signal for preemptive attack." Nathan blinked. "I was yawning." The staff-bearing Yilari narrowed its enormous eyes. "What is this yawning?" "It's what humans do when we're exhausted." "It's involuntary, it's not a threat." Vyark glanced at the others. A few were murmuring in their clicking native tongue, too fast for Nathan's translator implant to keep up. One of them had already backed out of the chamber entirely. "I promise," Nathan said slowly, "I'm not here to fight anyone." "I didn't mean to." The doors burst open behind him with a hydraulic hiss. A squad of Yilari guardians entered, armored in curved plates of translucent alloy. Their weapons were aimed directly at Nathan. He raised his hands again, very deliberately this time. Okay, let's not overreact." "You declared war under the sacred dome of neutrality," Vyark said, stepping back. "We must respond accordingly." "No, I didn't," Nathan said, louder now. "Look, I'm not a soldier, I'm a linguistics specialist. I haven't even held a gun in my life." One of the guardians stepped forward and pressed a small, disc-shaped device to Nathan's chest. A light blinked green once before turning red. "He is unarmed," the guardian said. "Then he is a sleeper agent," another muttered. Nathan's knees buckled slightly. "Oh, come on." The tension in the room thickened until Vyark raised a hand. "Hold." The guardians froze. Vyark stepped closer, studying Nathan's face. "Repeat the behavior." "What?" The battle cry. "Perform it again." Nathan hesitated. "You want me to yawn, if that is what you claim it to be," he sighed. "Fine." He forced a yawn, deliberately exaggerated, though it didn't take much effort. His body was begging for sleep. The Yilari watched in silence. When he finished, Vyark turned to another counselor who whispered something in alien speech. "Your physiology is inefficient," Vyark said. "Such an act would get you killed in a Yilari skirmish." "Yeah, well, humans don't usually have to fight during nap time," Nathan said. That didn't get a laugh. Not a single one. Vyark made a gesture to the guardians and they lowered their weapons. "You will be escorted to a containment suite for further evaluation." Nathan's shoulders sagged. "Of course I will." Two guardians flanked him as he was led out of the council chamber. He didn't resist. Honestly, he was too tired to argue. The suite was sterile and circular, with a bed that looked like it was designed by someone who had never seen a human spine. He collapsed onto it anyway, letting the artificial gravity pull him down. He barely noticed the soft thrum of the force field activating around the room. 3 hours later, Nathan woke to a stabbing pain in his side. He'd rolled into the edge of the bed's support frame. With a groan, he sat up, stretching carefully. His body ached all over. The room was dim now, lit by a soft amber glow. A tray of food had been delivered, a gelatinous mass that jiggled when he poked it. He didn't eat it. The door opened without warning. A Yilari stepped inside, shorter than the others and wearing a less formal robe. No weapons. My designation is Tarek. I am a cultural analyst. Nathan rubbed his eyes. Nathan Vellner, human, still tired. I have reviewed the footage of your Yawn. It matches behaviors observed in your species' open-source media. You watched internet videos? Tarek tilted its head. Yes. The one involving the infant who yawns and sneezes simultaneously was illuminating. Nathan chuckled despite himself. That one's a classic. I believe your claim of non-aggression, Nathan Vellner. However, Counselor Vierk does not. Big surprise. I have advised that further contact with humans be suspended until a comprehensive guide to your nonverbal expressions is compiled. Nathan stood slowly. That's probably a good idea. Tarek blinked. I would like your assistance in drafting that guide. Yeah, well, let me sleep first. Then we'll talk about yawns, shrugs, and everything in between. Tarek hesitated. You require unconscious stasis for energy recovery. Yeah, we call it sleep. Fascinating. The door closed behind Tarek. Nathan lay back down, eyes already closing. The next morning, he was escorted to a laboratory where a dozen Yilari researchers were waiting. Screens displayed slowed-down footage of various human behaviors. One screen showed a woman sneezing. Another showed a man stretching. Everything was labeled in blocky alien script. Begin with the yawn, Tarek said. Nathan yawned again to a chorus of frantic note-taking. Over the next 2 days, Nathan demonstrated dozens of gestures. Thumbs up, shrug, raised eyebrows. Every time, the Yilari would debate whether it was a threat, an insult, or a mating ritual. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then came the diplomatic accident. A group of Yilari delegates had visited Earth for a goodwill exchange. One of them had witnessed a man sigh heavily while looking at his phone and assumed it was an announcement of combat. The Yilari had drawn weapons in a shopping mall in Detroit. No one was hurt, but it made headlines fast. Nathan was summoned to the council chamber again. You must return to Earth, Vierk said. Your presence here has increased the risk of miscommunication. Or, Nathan said, I could stay and help you understand us better. We do not trust your species. Then maybe start trusting me. The room went silent again. Tarek stepped forward. Let him remain. He has already prevented one interstellar conflict. Vierk considered for a long moment. You may stay, but under supervision. Deal, Nathan said. The months that followed weren't easy. Nathan worked alongside Tarek and a small team of cultural analysts. He slept in a modified room with an actual mattress, thanks to Tarek's intervention. He taught the Yilari everything from handshakes to sarcasm. They were quick learners, but prone to overanalysis. One day, while demonstrating laughter, Nathan doubled over too hard and pulled a muscle in his side. The Yilari panicked, thinking he was dying. Tarek had to sedate 2 researchers. But slowly, trust began to grow. By the end of the 6th month, Nathan stood before the council again, this time with a completed guidebook in hand, or rather, projected in the air beside him. We call it the Human Handbook, he said. Vierk accepted the data with a nod. You have served well, Nathan Vellner. Thanks, and now if it's all right with you, I'm going to go home and sleep for a week. Permission granted. As he left the chamber, Tarek walked beside him. You will return, Nathan smiled. Yeah, after I rest. You will not issue a battle cry on the way out, he laughed. No promises. Tarek tilted its head. That was humor. Yes, that was a joke. I am improving. Nathan clapped him gently on the shoulder. You're doing great. And with that, he stepped into the shuttle that would take him home, leaving behind a world that had once armed itself because he was just tired. Nathan lay on the diagnostic slab trying not to roll his eyes as 3 Yilari technicians floated a scanning ring over his midsection. The ring buzzed faintly, and a holographic projection of his liver rotated above him like a souvenir globe. One of the technicians clicked its mandibles and adjusted the projection's hue. There is a mild irregularity in filtration rhythm, it said. Possible indication of internal decay. No, Nathan muttered, that's just caffeine withdrawal. Tarek, standing nearby, tilted his head. Withdrawal? Yeah, I haven't had coffee in 3 days. My body's staging a quiet rebellion. The technician adjusted a setting and the liver turned green. We have examined over 200 Earth medical texts. None mention this coffee. It's not in the textbooks, it's in the break rooms. Tarek turned to the others. Initiate behavioral hydration protocol. Begin with warm fluid ingestion. Wait, Nathan sat up. That's not gonna help. I need actual caffeine. We are not authorized to administer unknown stimulants, the technician replied. You were flagged neurologically erratic after your last sleep cycle. I had a nightmare. That's not erratic, that's just Tuesday. Tarek gestured for the scan to pause. Describe this nightmare. Nathan swung his legs over the side of the slab. No offense, but I'd rather not unpack my subconscious while half naked under alien lighting. We require context to assess your cognitive state. You ever dream you're back in high school and it's finals but you forgot to wear pants? Tarek consulted his tablet. We have no records of your educational garments affecting academic performance. Exactly, Nathan said. That's the point. The technician handed him a thermal wrap, which he draped over his shoulders like a disgruntled monk. Tarek moved closer, his posture unusually attentive. We observed elevated stress enzymes in your bloodstream during sleep. You exhaled abruptly multiple times and vocalized random syllables. Is this standard? Pretty much. That's called snoring and talking in your sleep, totally normal for humans. The technician looked alarmed. He emits encrypted transmissions unconsciously. Tarek raised a hand. They are not encrypted, they are disorganized reflections of his waking mind. Nathan rubbed his temples. Can we dial back the analysis? I'm not a lab rat. I'm just a guy who's been stuck in a facility with no sunlight and mystery soup for dinner. Tarek's eyes flickered. You require exposure to your native star. That would be great, yeah. Even a UV lamp would help. Look, when humans are deprived of natural light, our circadian rhythm tanks. That's probably half the reason I'm twitchy. The technician tapped a panel, initiating solar simulation array. A panel in the ceiling slid back with a mechanical sigh, revealing a cluster of golden emitters. Warm light flooded the room. Nathan squinted, then relaxed visibly. Better? Tarek asked. Yeah, like stepping out of a cave. He paused. Do Yilari even have day-night cycles? We do not sleep. Right, forgot I was among the sleepless elite. Tarek gestured toward the hallway. Come with me. There is a new module under construction. One designed for human habitation. They walked in silence for a while, passing chambers filled with floating instruments and corridors lit by bioluminescent vines. Everything smelled faintly of ozone and something like cinnamon. Nathan tried not to think about how long it had been since he'd last seen a tree. Eventually, they arrived at a wide chamber under construction. The floor was lined with a soft polymer that squished underfoot, and one wall was covered in a projection of what looked like a pine forest. Nathan blinked. Is that Mount Rainier? We sampled your data archives for calming imagery. This location appeared multiple times attached to positive emotional indicators. He stepped forward, staring at the projected trees. That's weirdly touching. A small drone zipped past his ear and began affixing a panel to the ceiling. Tarek walked to a control node. We are also replicating Earth gravity variants. The floor can simulate hillside incline and loamy texture. Nathan crouched, pressing his palm to the ground. That's not bad. Still smells like a dentist's office, but the effort's appreciated. We plan to invite additional humans once the chamber is complete. You will be the acclimation consultant. He looked up. You're expecting more of us. We are not expecting. We are preparing. Nathan stood. So what, you're creating a kind of embassy? Tarek paused. A buffer. Between your species and our assumptions. That hung in the air for a moment. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. Fair enough. Later that cycle, he returned to his quarters to find a small sealed container on his desk. Inside was a black cylinder labeled in shaky English script, "Simulated Coffee Compound 001B." He stared at it, then looked toward the ceiling. "You made coffee," Tarek's voice came through the intercom. "We lacked a complete formula, so we reverse-engineered based on behavioral expectation. The liquid may not be chemically identical, but the psychological ritual has been preserved." Nathan opened it and took a cautious sip. It was bitter, vaguely nutty, and slightly metallic, but it was warm and it hit the right spots. He sank onto the bed. "Tarek, if I didn't know better, I'd say you're trying to make me feel at home." "There is no benefit to housing an unstable human," he chuckled. "Sure." 2 days later, Nathan was invited to observe the Yilari first contact simulation trials. A group of trainees stood in a semicircle, facing a holographic model of a human. The model waved, stretched, sneezed, and tapped its feet. One trainee raised a hand. "Query, is the foot tapping a countdown to aggression?" "No," Nathan said. "It means they're impatient or bored." Another trainee watched the sneeze sequence. "Does this indicate expulsion of venom?" "No, that's just the body getting rid of irritants." "Dust, pollen, that kind of thing?" The trainees murmured among themselves. One stepped forward. "If human expressions are so ambiguous, how do you interpret each other?" "Well," Nathan said, "we use context, tone of voice, facial cues, cultural norms. It's complicated, but we figure it out." The trainee seemed troubled. "You operate with ambiguous data and still maintain social cohesion," Nathan shrugged. "Most of the time." After the session, Tarek joined him at the observation window. "We have begun referring to your behavioral ambiguity as dynamic uncertainty. Some of our theorists find it distressing." "Yeah, humans do that too. We hate not knowing things, but we're good at guessing. You rely on instinct. We call it intuition. It's not always right, but it gets us through the day." Tarek looked at the holographic human still looping through gestures. "Your unpredictability makes diplomacy inefficient, but it also makes you difficult to manipulate." "Exactly. You can't predict what we'll do next." "That's our secret weapon." Tarek considered this. "We have no equivalent trait." "Then maybe that's why you brought me here." That night, Nathan received a message carved into a wafer-thin data strip. The Yilari had approved the creation of a permanent human liaison post. He was being offered the position. He stared at the strip for a long time. The next morning, he met Tarek in the Arboretum chamber, which now had a small garden of Earth-compatible plants, mostly herbs and low-light vines. "You read the message," Tarek said. "I did. You are considering refusal. Not because I don't want it, but because I don't want to be the guy who speaks for an entire planet. You are not expected to. You are expected to speak for yourself. That is sufficient." Nathan knelt beside a basil plant and ran a finger along its stem. "You're learning fast. We had to. You taught us to look beyond the gesture," he smiled faintly. "Then I guess I better keep talking." Tarek extended a hand. "Welcome, Liaison Vellner." Nathan took it. "Just call me Nathan." The garden lights brightened slightly as the ceiling adjusted to simulate dawn. The basil leaves trembled in a gentle artificial breeze. Nathan looked up. "Hey, Tarek, did you ever figure out what a yawn actually means?" Tarek nodded. "Yes." "It means you are still here." Nathan laughed softly. "Yeah, I guess it does." The simulated pine scent had been replaced with something closer to petrichor, and Nathan noticed it immediately as he stepped into the acclimation chamber housing the Earth-style garden. The basil had grown fuller since his last visit, curling around the edge of the hydroponic channel. A few stalks of mint had been added, and in one corner, a squat vine struggled to resemble a tomato plant. Tarek stood near the control interface, watching a small screen that displayed fluctuating data in pulsing green lines. "That new?" Nathan asked, nodding toward the vine. "It is an attempt," Tarek said. "The solanine compounds proved unstable under our nutrient distribution system. We modified the matrix, but the fruit remains inedible." "Well, it looks like a tomato. That's something." "It smells like oxidized copper." "Still progress." Nathan sat cross-legged on the synthetic grass, resting his elbows on his knees. He'd been cleared for longer visits to the simulation rooms, now that his health metrics had stabilized. The incident with the sleeplessness and caffeine deficiency had left the Yilari scrambling to create protocols for what they now called species-specific neurological flux states. Nathan just called them bad days. Tarek crouched beside him, adjusting the folds of his robe with the same care he used when calibrating a sensor array. The others are preparing for the first arrival. From Earth? Yes, 3 individuals, a medic, an engineer, and a cultural archivist. Nathan rubbed his eyebrow. They're sending a cultural archivist, must have read about the mall incident. They believe your experience has mitigated worst-case scenarios, so I'm the baseline. Great. Tarek tilted his head. Was that sarcasm? A little. The chamber's ambient lighting shifted subtly. It was late afternoon in the simulated cycle. Nathan leaned back on his hands, letting the warmth soak into his skin. It wasn't sunlight, but it was close enough to feel like he might forget for a moment that he was floating in the middle of space surrounded by people who'd once thought a sneeze could be a chemical attack. "You're not worried about them reacting badly to this place?" he asked. "We have corrected the sensory balance. The olfactory feedback is within Earth tolerances. Acoustic dampeners have been removed, and we installed a door that creaks when opened." Nathan blinked. "You did that on purpose? Your species associates imperfection with authenticity," he laughed. "You really did your homework. We had an excellent tutor." A low chime echoed through the chamber. Tarek stood and tapped a panel on the wall. The screen displayed a countdown in Terran numerals. "The transport will dock in 6 hours. Nathan exhaled slowly. "Then I've got 6 hours to make sure no one accidentally tries to hug a Yilari again. That didn't go well last time. We have adjusted our response protocols. Physical contact will no longer trigger alarms. That's growth." They walked the corridor leading from the chamber to the observation deck, passing under a series of translucent arches that shimmered faintly with internal circuitry. Nathan ran a hand along one of them, feeling the subtle vibration beneath the surface. "You're quieter today," Tarek observed, "just thinking about how far this place has come." Tarek paused. "You expected less." "I expected disaster." They reached the observation deck. Outside, the stars hung motionless, endless, and silent. Below them, the docking platform extended like a petal unfolding. 3 small figures were visible on the screen approaching through the airlock chamber. Tarek adjusted the focus. The human engineer is named Mallory, the medic is Saeed. The archivist has chosen to go by their middle name, Jules. Nathan studied them. They look nervous. They were briefed thoroughly, but our appearance remains unsettling for many. They'll adjust. I am less certain of that than you. Nathan glanced sideways. You're worried? I am. Prepared? There is a difference. They descended to the reception bay together. The Yilari greeting team stood in an arc, robes subtly color-coded to indicate their roles. Nathan had insisted on that after the first month. Humans needed visual cues, and the Yilari robes had previously all been identical, which led to some awkward confusion during early diplomatic exchanges. The airlock doors hissed open. The 3 humans stepped in, eyes darting from wall to ceiling. Mallory carried a tool case, Saeed had a compact medical scanner clipped to his belt, and Jules held a tablet already recording. Nathan stepped forward. "Welcome aboard. I'm Nathan Vellner, liaison." Jules blinked. "You're real, last I checked." "Come on, I'll show you the acclimation chamber before any of you try to interpret a head nod as a felony." Their walk to the chamber was quiet, filled with the soft hum of machinery and the occasional beep from Saeed's scanner. Mallory studied the walls with interest. "You got artificial gravity this smooth?" she asked. "Custom system. Took them weeks to tune it right for joint pressure. Feels natural." Nathan held the chamber door open. The creak was subtle but intentional. Jules raised an eyebrow. "You made a door creak." "Authenticity," Nathan said. Inside, the three moved slowly, stepping onto the artificial grass with cautious curiosity. Saeed knelt by the mint plant, scanning the leaves. No pathogens. Impressive replication. Tarek entered behind them. Jules turned and froze. Tarek raised one hand in greeting. "I acknowledge your presence." Jules hesitated. "I acknowledge yours." Nathan stepped between them gently. "Just keep your hands in view, avoid sudden gestures until they've seen the handbook." Mallory wandered to the tomato vine. "This yours?" "It's a work in progress," Tarek said. "Looks better than what I got growing in my apartment, and I've got sunlight." Tarek's posture relaxed slightly. Saeed straightened from his scan. "I read your file, Nathan. You had a physiological collapse your first week." "Yeah, I yawned and nearly triggered an interstellar war." "Long story." Jules tapped their tablet. "We're going to need your raw logs. They're archived, but you'll want to scrub the bits where I talk to myself." They spent the next hour cataloging the chamber's features. Jules recorded scent profiles, Mallory tested floor compression, and Saeed ran a baseline test on the ambient air quality. Everything passed, though the humidity was slightly off. Eventually, they returned to the observation deck. The stars hadn't moved. They never did. But the newcomers looked calmer now, more grounded. Nathan leaned on the railing. "So, thoughts?" Jules studied the projection of the garden below. "This place feels deliberately human." "That was the idea." Saeed checked his scanner. "Your vitals are steady now, no anomalies." Nathan nodded. "Took some getting used to." Mallory glanced at Tarek. "You built all this just so we'd feel less alien." Tarek clasped his hands. "We built it so we'd stop misreading your survival as aggression." There was a long pause. Then Jules said, "That's the most honest answer I've heard in years." Nathan smiled faintly. Hours later, after the guests had settled into their quarters and the official exchange had concluded, Nathan returned to the acclimation chamber. Alone now, he sat near the mint plant and closed his eyes. Tarek entered quietly, stopping a pace behind him. "They will stay," he said. "They should," Nathan replied. "They'll learn fast." "The archivist recorded our interaction. It will be studied." "Good." Tarek lowered himself beside Nathan on the grass. "You are no longer needed as the only liaison. I know, you could return home. I could. But you won't." Nathan opened his eyes. "No, I think I'll stay. Someone has to make sure the tomato doesn't explode." Tarek blinked slowly. "It will not explode. Then I'll stay to witness that." The chamber lights dimmed gradually, mimicking early dusk. The basil leaves rustled faintly in the artificial breeze. Tarek folded his hands. "We misinterpreted your exhaustion as hostility, but I see now your resilience is not a threat. It is a form of patience." Nathan looked up at the soft glow above. "You finally understand," Tarek nodded. "Yes, you were not declaring war, you were simply tired." Nathan lay back, arms behind his head, and let out a long exhale. "Exactly."